Hi everyone, Randy Lilson, Chief Marketing Officer at Conga, and today I'm very pleased to be joined by Werner Boeing. Werner is currently the CEO at evisory. He is the former CIO at Roche Diagnostics, and he is the former VP of IT at Campbell Soup. Today we're going to be talking about leading a business transformation. So Werner, let's start with this. You obviously had a lot of years in the healthcare industry, and many people say that healthcare is so special that at times it can be used as an explanation why something doesn't work in healthcare that has been a source of transformation in other industries. You've worked in multiple industries. What's your take on this?
Well, Randy, thank you. It's really so special because it's about us. It's about humans. And we are all special. We are all individuals. Hence, it's a very easy way to extend to saying, well, then all the topics needs to be specific to the industry that's dealing with us as humans. But the reality is, I worked in automotive, I worked in consumer goods, in pharmaceuticals and medtech. You find a lot of things have problems, have similar kind of notions that you can learn from. And the time horizon, certain transformations are hitting industries are different. So, for instance, the automotive industry was hit with the digital revolution far earlier, and they had to deal with it in a really intense way to maintain its competitive advantage. Whereas pharmaceuticals had, with their classical R&D approach, huge success, continuously developing new drugs. But then finally, the challenges of resource constraints and complexity kicked in. And then people were shy of looking at other industries and seeking, are there other ways? Are there other ways from a product R&D side? Are there other ways from a commercial perspective? So digital marketing is an example, moving away from a Salesforce-driven sales model to more consumer education. All those things are available in other industries, but it took quite some time to get adopted. And I think that's something where we need to look out for people who have cross-industry experience, helping to speed up the learning across industries.
Healthcare systems are transforming. Outcome orientation and patient centricity are common denominators. What does that mean for capabilities that have to be provided to make this a reality? And where are the biggest gaps?
Well, this is a very important question. Everybody agrees on those tokens that you have just shared on patient centricity. We should have healthcare that's really targeting at you as an individual, give you the services and the help needed. And we should also measure its efficacy, the outcome, and pay and reward outcome rather than input. Well, that's the easy part of agreeing what we all want to. But the capabilities of measuring outcome in a healthcare setting, it's so complex because we are not monocausal elements. So if you get a treatment, you still exercise or you don't exercise, you eat or you eat well. So there's so many other elements influencing healthcare outcome that's sometimes very difficult to measure an investment into a therapy, into a support, into a service. So what we need is really data capabilities, ability to model. Also look at, in a B2B setting, how do we set up contracts in a way that they are having an agreed set of KPIs that you can use as outcome measurements? How do we monitor them? How do we move away from a once a year you meet, how much products you have delivered? So you need to have an ongoing intimate engagement in a B2B setting through the whole time.
In many industries, the role of ecosystems becomes more and more important. This seems awfully true as well for healthcare. What does that mean for the types of deals that are required, and how does revenue lifecycle management look in these scenarios?
Yeah, if you look like in many other industries, we're moving from a product-centric view of commercial realization into having associated services, having augmented additional capabilities. And initially, you start with offering them yourself. But then you realize in order to address the customer needs, you need a broader spectrum of capabilities, and you can't have all of them in your portfolio. Some can for a certain dimension, but in healthcare, we need drugs that needs to be developed, but also it needs to be delivered to patients. They need to be administered. they need to be applied. So you may need a drug delivery system, and you may need an algorithm that defines the doses in order to have a very sophisticated scenario, what is called closed loop therapy, to come to life. So looking dynamically on your body response and adjust doses of a given therapy. So this is just one example, but you need different parties to come together. So from a single product-oriented view, volume minus discount generates revenue, you come into multiple parties have to play together in bringing and designing customer solutions. Sometimes one is in the lead, some of the B2B partners are in the lead, but many times it's really much more fluffy and difficult. So the contractual side to bring this together beyond the legal side, but in the real practical operational and the delivery side, how do you know what's going on? This is really important. So beyond the ecosystem as a kind of a metaphor of our need to solve more complex problems, to bringing different people together, it has a realization in the commercial side as well. So in a way, contracts shouldn't be in the way, shouldn't be a limiting factor to enable collaborations and ecosystem play. I would say we should turn it around. We should create environments where you can have flexible contracting. You can easier adjust, where you can do ABC testing on hypotheses across stakeholder.
Healthcare processes are typically rather complex, and the addition of digital solutions seems to actually add to the complexity. How does customer experience play out? And is there still a back and front office with data flowing across these past boundaries?
Well, that's a very, very good question. So I would say, let's start with the end. The role of customer experience in this case is to make the internal value chain of an organization transparent. The customer shouldn't care. And so the role of back office and front office, where do they come from? Internally, in companies you hear one talks about the business and the support function, which is an irrelevant question in these days, because in the consumption of product and adjacent services, you not only need product features in order to steer maybe servicing a medtech device, you also need to know what is the service level. What kind of services have you been granted? How much have I consumed? So the interaction between B2B partners in such a setting becomes much more rich and intense. And it doesn't warrant like a disconnect between the back office, maybe once a month, post invoicing, there's some discussion between some administrative departments. Now, the consumption of the product and the services and the reflection on the contract and the agreement on what is happening requires really deep customer intimacy, and not just in discussing it as a prospect when you want to win a new customer, but in the usage of a product and service and the real details.
Customer intimacy starts and ends with reliable knowledge and data. In the digital world of omnichannel, hybrid solutions build on physical products and information services. This starts to get really complicated and difficult to manage. How do you manage and incentivize organizations, departments, individuals, and external parties to make this a reality?
I think this is a holy grail question. So let me boil it down maybe into 2 to 3 steps. I think the first thing that we need an altruistic data culture. And what does it mean? In order to bring all those different components together, regardless which role you play in a value chain, and whether you benefit from maintaining accurate data, adding to it, characterizing the context, or teaching other people, letting them know what the data actually means for you, you need to be motivated to do all those things, regardless whether you benefit yourself from it. And altruistic behavior is highly desired. but rarely found. Also in biological systems, very few places where animals and plants work in altruistic settings. So we may need, as humans, a bit of a tilt, a little bit of a helping hand to do the right thing. And for that, I think we need to make people understand this. And this sounds a typical thing. You need to train people. But I think we need to tell stories that bring this to life in the language, in a way that really means something, not an expert talk for data guys to data guys, but how do you make somebody in a certain part of the value chain aware the consequences of not well-maintained data sets. To me, we need symbols for it. We need top-line leadership talks that they really care for, that they maybe in a C-level executive also owns some components of data and shares with the organization what she or he does to fulfill this altruistic data culture. Because customer centricity cannot be done if we not collectively want to understand the customer. That means day in, day out in all the interaction, capturing, optimizing, cleaning the data, because then we can have a better response to customers' need.
You've had a lot of experience working with multiple systems, Werner. Would you rather trust the data in the ERP or CRM system to build a commercial strategy, for example, a customer segmentation?
That's a very good question. I would say, based on my decades of experience, you can find the people, the organization, and the culture if you look into the systems and into the data. So they are representatives of the culture, what is important, what they care for. So actually, you can also ask the question, would you ask your sales department to make a reliable forecast or a customer segmentation without the help of maybe the marketing guys? So the systems are as good as the feeding and the feeding culture that is creating the real results, because it's not the functional sophistication of a system. Yes, operationally, if you look at a detailed level, at a time-bound level, an ERP system should give you the very precise things that are happening. But we all know there are limits to it. And then on the sales side, you look a lot about in the CRM system, it's a lot about prospect and possibilities, and some say hope. And to me, a process like SNOP is an evergreen topic. And why is that? Because the incentives, how a sales organization is being managed and an operations unit is different. Yeah, during the year, the sales organizations, even if it's underperforms in the moment, still hopes to get the bonus towards the year end. Hence, the forecast will be higher. Whereas an operations unit is much more conservative and looks what has happened and rather less future oriented. So when you look at a customer segmentation, coming back to your question, you need to look at the past, you need to look at the future, you look at different details and perspectives. And none of the system gives you that. But I would look at the people that I know. I would use the data as topical indications, as proof points. But I would rather speak to the right people, informed through the system. But the decision-making shouldn't be in the systems. It should be with people that are competent, that have a meaningful and maybe also provocative discussion, because customer segmentation is a key element for commercial success.
Thanks, Werner, for the great insights. Thank you for joining us. We invite you to learn more at conga.com.